Hey, it's Chris. Let's do this crowdfunding roundup. If you thought this week was going to be quiet, just kidding. You know, I did the upcoming video from last weekend and I was like, yeah, these games are kind of interesting. You know, you got Mistwind, you got Algomancy. You know, it's going to be kind of, whoa, 6 figures getting thrown around here. Post Gen Con, people apparently didn't spend enough at the convention, right? If you missed the rant video, go check that one out. That's why I'm chuckling. Because I was ranting about too much money being thrown around in those situations. But here we are throwing, you know, 6 figures around in crowdfunding, multiple projects on a week that I really wasn't expecting. But this is kind of fun. I like this. I like this. This is a good week, folks. A little bit of everything. That's all I got. Let's go. I was talking to a publisher this week and they were like, hey, you really are able to match our energy. That's awesome. Not many people can do that. I'm like, yeah, I'm a little crazy like that. What do we got going on? Mistwind. First up, route, pick up and deliver with flying whales, right? Can't make this stuff up. Kreel is your currency of choice as you're moving along these routes, as you're creating these outposts in order to deliver 2 different types of objectives to gather tokens. Depending on what sort of objective you pick up and deliver, depends on the amount of victory points that you're getting. So like the basic ones are giving you 1 victory point at the end. The nation ones are giving you 2 victory points. And this is played over 4 rounds where what you're essentially doing is you're taking your faction with your numbered discs, as you can see in the picture right here, and you're laying them on one of the various sides of the board, which all have a numbered system of 1 through 5, which also represent either slightly the same mechanic of how you're going to take that action or completely different. And so your number of your token has to match the number on the side of the space. So if you've already played your 2 on one side of the board, you can't take the 2 action on the other side of the board, which is going to be slightly different than say the 3 action. So how you mitigate that, how you choose to do so, is the main crux of this game in a nutshell. It's a pick up and deliver though, and you're building your routes. Now the tricky point is when you're building your routes, when you're traveling along these routes, you can travel along your own routes for free, and you have to pay money to travel along other people's routes, but you can do it still nonetheless. And like I said, 4 rounds, miniature driven here. You're going to pay a slightly premium price point, but they've got a little bit of exclusive content, mostly non-gameplay here, as well as a little bit of deluxification, a little bit of extra gameplay in general with some social goals. And there's a good how to play on the board right here. Like I mentioned, discs, movement, loading and unloading, and then getting whatever rewards you want over 4 rounds of doing this. Because when you're doing this as a whole, what a round looks like is you lay a token. You take whatever action that is on the side, right? Then everyone else does the same thing, and you do that 4 times per round. So 16 total actions is what it's going to be looking like in the end. The rulebook is pretty good. I was really impressed though. This rulebook, it's only 8 pages long. So this is not like a 30-page rulebook with a route, pick up and deliver, area control, mishmash, mess all over the place. You can go read this, you know, in 3 or 4 minutes and get a good sense of the rules. Now I'll say the flow of those actions, the flow combination isn't in the rulebook so much. So if you're really looking for that, then you go up here and you do the learn to play video. So that's my recommendation, because I just don't get the great sense of flow from the actual rulebook itself, even though it lays it out very, very nicely. So by the time you're watching this, the early bird discount is done. But if you want to get a plush, you can check that out as a flying whale. Side note here, for all of you that don't pay attention to this sort of thing, we're trying to get the kid, the youngest one, into stuffed animals, and he just has no interest. The only thing he semi-remotely likes is a garbage truck stuffed animal that he got because animals weren't appealing enough to him. So did you know that they make truck stuffed animals? Well, you do now. Learning new stuff on Liege every week. Video, pledge, naming contest, pledge. There you go. Shipping is whatever. So it's $80 to get the early bird, $90 right now. So that's what you need to know. Again, $151,000. I give them a lot of kudos. This looks like a solid streamlined game. It's just, okay, if it wasn't miniature driven, could you pick it up for 50 at retail? That'd be my only question. But deluxification, there you go. It's the crowdfunding side of things and why it's on crowdfunding in the first place. So yeah, makes sense. Thunderstone Quest Uncharted Waters. Now the theme of the next couple campaigns, for pluses or minuses, you know, I'm going to give some leeway. because a few of these don't have rulebooks. And so this is Thunderstone Quest from AEG, and you know AEG's been around the block. This is like quest like 15 or 16 for the total of them. Raging Seas and Ancient Adversaries. And I like the idea of these, right? Like, I love the idea of Thunderstone Quest in general. I never get it played because it's so much setup, teardown, and back and forth that I just have a hard time, especially when I have other deck builders. But this is a deck building dungeon crawl style game head to head. Now there is a cooperative mode called the Barricades, which you can buy separately, that actually the intro price is better now than it ever has been at $50. So if you're looking to try out this game, I mean, there's probably not a better time to do so. It's just whether or not this appeals to you in the first place. It only comes with quest number 1, but for $50 to get in at this, that's really good, because I think I got in like with quests like 1, 2, and 3 or something for like $125 or something, the second Kickstarter around. So take that for what it is. They give you just the briefest synopsis of what these two expansions are going to offer, and the price point for both of these expansions is $60, which if you scroll down here in a second, you'll see that each of the individual expansions later that they're selling throughout the campaign, because I'm not sure how wide they actually do this distribution, because I don't remember seeing a lot of these expansions on their website when I bought Rolling Heights a few months ago. They're $40 each, and so that's a big difference. You know, that's a $10 difference per expansion. And let's see, yep, right there, there's the solo co-op mode. Now, what did they say? I think I skipped what the difference was here. Raging Seas, here we go. Set sail with a new exploration system. Okay. And then Ancient Enemies, you'll stack totems for greater power. So new types of cards, new types of mechanics. Again, I just worry about power creep with anything that's got, 16 iterations or 16 versions coming out. I think it's a great game. I think it's a fantastic game. It's just the overhead is much larger than anything else. But if you want to know more details on this actual, what's different, what's new, and also, why would you get this expansion over the other expansions, there's not really a good guide or really good information on that. Because it's just kind of like, okay, well, here are the other expansions, and I don't know if anyone's ever taken the time, probably somebody out there on the internet, to say which ones are the best. But honestly, you just pick something that's appealing thematically to you, and you go for that rather than, specific mechanics as a whole. So again, I wish there was a rule book. I wish there was a little bit more explanation on the page, because AEG knows how to do this, right? And I think this is just like one of those campaigns where the bare minimum is getting put out there, and it does grate me a little bit, but it's also a well-established product. So like how you actually play the game, there's plenty of other information on that individually. I just wish, again, as a consumer, there was more specific information on this to make it stand out from some of the other stuff. So anyway, there you go. Ascendancy, again, this is going to be 3 in a row, because, by the time you guys are probably even watching this, Thunderstone Quest will be over $100,000. Ascendancy, 4X fantasy worker placement with asymmetric factions, heirs of a throne, trying to unlock various tech trees and various almost sandbox-esque how to win style of things in many different manners. And so what you're doing in this hex-based situational game is choosing your house, taking them to the throne, trying to get a tech tree as well as additional attributes that not only will unlock during your game, but you can potentially take them to a game in the next session via a slight legacy campaign aspect of things. And you play how you want, like it says. I worry, though, as I always say, right? If you're doing competitive, cooperative, and solo, as well as free-for-all, you need to make sure those are excellent. I want excellence. I'd rather have 2 of those modes or less done excellently rather than, one of them pretty good and the rest kind of maybe okay, right? So that's my only concern, but this is also my weekend that's going to be enveloping it as a whole, right? Like, I have the prototype copy. I'll hopefully have a video come out sometime next week in terms of my full thoughts on it, but I'm really excited to see. I love competitive. I love free-for-all, but I'm really most interested in seeing how you do this cooperatively. So that's going to be how I sort of interpret things. I'll hopefully give a little bit of a view on each one of them as well, though, and that's why the whole weekend is going to be taken up by that. But that gives you just an illustration here of how you're going to be taking the victory, right? You can do economic, you can do building, you can do tech, you can do expansion. And so I like that you don't get pigeonholed into things. Now, again, on the other scope of things, is it going to be too much? Is it going to be too much going on? Is it trying to be too ambitious? That's my only fear, again, not having it really as much to the table to give you a grasp on that at this point. So it's expensive, though. This is a big, extensive game. They're throwing in some miniatures here a little bit with the core. So it's going to cost you $100. If you want the upgrades, though, I love that they're separating them out. I always give kudos for that, separating out miniatures and gameplay content. So that's going to be $160, $200 for everything deluxeified if you want, including a mat. So Runs you through the houses, runs you through what you're getting here, all of that stuff. Great. Premium miniatures, playmat. Yep. More miniatures. And then a little bit more content down here. So, I mean, Legacy Light 4X Exploring gives you some more information. Again, this is one that I think you're going to have to watch some video for. The rulebook is not going to do this justice. You're going to have to see how it actually flows to see if this is a 4X style of game, or do you even like the 4X? Because this gives you the option for the 4th X in terms of exploration and, you know, extermination. And some people really don't like the extermination style in this sort of game. And so that's going to be the question of, is that good enough for you, though? I'm a huge fan of tech trees. And it's just kind of giving an interesting twist on things. Again, a lot of stuff going on there, as you can see, though. So that's the other concern. Is this going to be too much stuff if you're looking for something that's going to be more streamlined? Is it going to be more like a Magic Realms? Speaking of Magic Realms, did you know they're remaking Magic Realms and it's going to come to crowdfunding in the next like 6 months or so? Anyway, side note there, but everything there. Boss battles, skip combat all entirely. So again, like choose your own adventure style of things. So yeah, like I said, this is my weekend. This is what's going on. So give it a look-see if it has any interest to you in the first place. That is Ascendancy. Now, from the opposite end of things, going from a new designer to one that's been quite around for a while, Tristan Hall. And we are getting a new game in sort of, not really the Killforth series, but All or Nothing Games is giving us another in the lines of their more recent one, Veilwrath, as more of a solo game. But this gives you the option not only of just solo, but 1 to 3 players as a card-driven dungeon crawl-esque, very thematically incorporated, as all All or Nothing games are. And this is taking the Veilwrath system of your card-driven action selection system and just making it a little bit better. And you know what? It is in the Killforth universe. I was right. I second-guessed myself before reading the subtitle. I love this because it's, you know, probably some of the most fantastic art on crowdfunding in general, period. They do an amazing job of that. And again, it's all like unique. There's no duplicates here. They do a great job of this. It's just with some of these Killforth games, they are, you know, more dice driven, more random, more deck-esque. And so is that of your ilk or not? And they do make a little bit of a premium product because of some of those costs and because it's manufactured over in Europe and that's where they're based out of. And so, yeah, you're going to pay upwards of probably about $70, $75 for most of these games. And this one is no different. This is very similarly priced to all the other Killforth games that I've covered. You know, I was actually an original Killforth backer, the very first one. But I was so new at board games at that point. Like, I didn't know what I liked and I didn't like. And so I ended up like getting it, trading it away, getting it again, trading it away, but I don't think I ever really gave it the full shake. So at some point I'm going to go and look at this, especially Veilforth, but this is probably the most appealing to me of all of them, to be frank. And so that's why I'd say at the beginning of the video that this was probably one of the biggest weeks of surprise I've seen, because you can make a good argument that Mistwind seems solid. You know, this is a solid IP. This is a solid game that people really like. I mean, otherwise they wouldn't be getting $90,000, $100,000 in the 6th time around or 7th time or whatever. Ascendancy, new designer getting, you know, well, probably $250,000 by the time they're ending. And All or Nothing here is going to pull out easily, you know, 100 or 200 by the end of this as well. So this is a really weak, and we haven't gotten to the next one, which is also pulling in 6 figures from a completely different other asymmetric Magic the Gathering style head-to-head mage dueling game. So you're taking your hero, you're taking your action selection system, you're exploring, you're combating, and you're going forward in vignettes and scenarios. If it's like Veilwrath, seeing how you can do encounters and threats and everything else in between. Again, the problem is there's no rulebook yet. They say it's going to be downloadable soon, so I would imagine maybe by the time you guys are watching this, it'll be up. Hopefully it will. If you want just the brief synopsis, here's 15 minutes of gameplay, 15 minutes of designer overview. There's a lot of dice rolling. There's a lot of +1s to this, +1s to that. That's the style of this type of game. And so if that's not your style, if you weren't a fan of that, if this isn't your style, if you weren't a fan of that with Killforth, I mean, I don't think this is as far away from Killforth as you might like, but it's also going to be slightly different that if you weren't a fan of Killforth, this is still probably worth giving a look-see if it entices you with anything else. The thing I worry about, and the thing that kind of was with Killforth's biggest criticism, I think, was that, you know, at the higher player counts, like Killforth is mostly, I think, played as a predominant, if you look on Board Game Geek, recommended at the player count of 1 or 2. And so that would be my only concern with adding a 4th player expansion. I love the idea of a 4th character, and I love the idea of a Necromancer, but is it going to be as smooth, and how much downtime and how much runtime is it going to be playing with this with like 3 or 4? That would be my biggest concern. Otherwise, I mean, I don't have any concerns about the game itself. I don't have any concerns about the production. He goes down here at the bottom and shows you a little bit of the Veil Wrath stuff. And then also, let's see, where is it? Right here. Some of the other Kill Force stuff, and we get all the way down here and we see all the other stuff that they put out and where things are at, and as well as Sublime Dark, which is the one everyone else is waiting for to get more details on, because that's the one that's been hyped, or randomly hyped over the last year or two. But we'll see what this final project looks like. And this is one that, again, surprising me how much I actually like this one, and now that I'm looking at the Kickstarter page, and recommend that you check it out as well. So there you go. Algomancy, $100,000. Now, if you had told me Algomancy, I think I said this on the upcoming video from last weekend, I said I wouldn't be surprised if this has got like $100,000 or this gets like $10,000. And this looks like, originally I was poo-pooing this. I'll be frank with you guys. I looked at it, it's got the Facebook ads, and three-quarters, not even three-quarters, probably 80% of the ones that get the Facebook ads, like, I'm like, there's a reason they're on Facebook ads, right? Like, it's not because it's going to be a solid game. It's not because people are going to like it. It's because that's the way they're trying to drum up business, and that's the only market they're going for right now sometimes. I mean, that's the truth of it. But then, there's a fair bit that do the other. And so I saw this one on Facebook, and I was like, but this seems really solid. My biggest concern when I was talking about this one last week was I wasn't quite sure, based on the rules, based on the description, when you talk about drafting with this and they compare it to Magic the Gathering, right? Like, I was really concerned that you're gonna have to draft pre-game and then have to try and like put your deck together and then actually play the game. No. And that's why this one is so appealing to me right now. It's because you're drafting intra-game drafting. What you're doing is you're getting 10 cards and you draft a certain number of them into your deck, your hand, your tableau, if you will. And what you do at the start of the game is you pick 3 factions, and it reminds me a little bit of Gosu X, which I've got sitting down here next to me, where you're drafting those factions, smooshing them all together and making a common draw pile. Then you deal out those 10 cards, then you play those cards, and after 3 rounds, or actually n+1 rounds, so if you play 1 versus 1, it's going to be after 3 rounds, you then draft 10 more cards and have the ability to manipulate and change and do it again. And so it's first one to knock out their opponent in that sense. But the battle system also is a little bit unique in how you're going to be lining these up, because they say there's definitively not technically turns. You're both just kind of playing, but one of you is potentially going to have initiative, so that if you need to resolve something, initiative will be there. And so basically it's a Magic the Gathering style head-to-head battling, and you've got even the cards that have a Magic the Gathering style layout, mana and the cost in the upper left-hand corner, as well as the attributes like your attack and defense, the little slash, like 4/4. This is a 4/4 creature. Like, they've got that sort of going on, as well as a mana system that they're utilizing that you're tapping, but also depending on how many of you have down, they're going to have some asymmetric abilities with the mana that's going to affect things, as well as magical spells and effects or events that are going to be able to be used at various times, not only during upgrading of your cards, but also only during combat or other times as well. So it gives you a little bit of flavor there, but it's very, very similar in some of that aesthetic and some of that gameplay. The difference is that you can have unlimited columns of creatures in front of you, and all you need to do is block the column not to take damage. But if you can't block the column, if it's 3 wide or 5 wide, whatever's in that column is going to deal you damage in the first place. Better than I was expecting, and I love the intra gameplay draft. So I'm really intrigued by that, and it just seems like the artwork is kind of cool too. So this is one that is definitely more on my radar now than I was expecting, just like Kreel. It seems like they're doing something slightly unique. Now, I think a lot of the mechanics in terms of some of these cards, as you can see here, putting a +1 counter on it, pay 3 and tap it and put a +1 counter on me. Yeah, I mean, some of that stuff is very similar to Magic the Gathering. So that'd be my only fear, is if you didn't like Magic the Gathering playstyle, this one might be not that different, but the rulebook is pretty nice, except for some of the combat stuff, which still seems very, very technically written in there. And so it's got a few examples which help flesh it out, but that's the biggest confusion point when you're reading through it. So it wouldn't be the worst thing to watch some of the video up there as well. The biggest problem is, $69 for a base game and $120. Now this says up to 10 players, so this is just times 2, I guess. So if you really want to have like duplicates, depending on which sets you're combining, that'd be my only concern, because that's a lot of money to get in any game, any card game right now. $70, not too bad. I mean, 700 cards, well, 635. We'll see. I have no idea. This is now on my radar when it wasn't before. It's just, again, like how different is it in the actual gameplay mechanics, not so much gameplay flow and the abilities rather than just the mechanics of it, because I mean there's some similarity in mechanics, but like the attributes and the special conditions down here at the bottom, how similar or not are those going to be? So, yeah, there you go. What are we looking at? Any stretch goals here? Nope, just straight up going to be that price. And yeah, kind of nice. Okay, yeah, definitely check this one out if you're interested in anything like this. In a self-contained Magic the Gathering, not pricey odd after a year or so of pack buying and random pack chasing, if you will. So that is Algomancy. Next up, we got Farms Race, $40,000. Never heard of this one, right? 500 backers, because I don't know where this is coming from, Medium Brow Games, but it is heavily influenced by Catan. And you'll see that in a second. These hex-based situational grids are very similar, because you're also going to be building barns that are going to be upgraded. And you know, the original barns are worth 1 point, then 2 victory points for the upgraded barns. There's going to be a little area control instead of a longest road, and there's going to be nukes. And so if you build the most nukes, we'll get there in a second and you'll understand why we're talking about nukes. You also get victory points as well. So it's it's first one up to a certain amount of victory points in order to win the game. But what you're going to be doing on this turn is what you're going to be doing in this game, though, is this is a slight variation. Like I said, at the beginning of the game, you're going to get a faction and you're going to get like a mutation. And they say all of these mutations are just like crazy, groundbreaking asymmetry. And so it's going to determine your main strategy, potentially, of how you're going to be interacting on the board as you move your herds across the board. But when you go into these different hexes, you're going to be having to battle not only other herds for control, but also humans. As they say, humans are lazy and they don't move out of their own areas. But you don't know how many humans are there, as it shows you here in the example, until you flip it over. And then you have to do combat. Combat is rolling dice. If you roll the right sides of the dice, then you do damage to either herds or humans or nothing. And last one standing wins in the area. Rinse and repeat. The nukes, though, you can play a nuke and nuke a whole hex next to you and do 1 damage to everything in that area. And so if you have 2 nukes, you can take out everything, because herds have 2 health and humans only have 1, because, you know, 2 legs only get 1 health and 4 legs get 2 health anyway. So that's what they've got going on. So they say, okay, well, if you have more herd there, because it's a risk type battle situation where if you just have more standing at the end, you win. But if someone nukes you, then they could take out a lot of your livestock in the first place. And they show you exactly what it's doing there. Resources, you at the end of every turn, you roll 2 resource dice. You get those resources. They're going to help you build things. But you're allowed to trade just like in Catan, except if it's your turn. So you can just trade at the end of everything once you do everything else that we're mentioning here. So conquest is part of it as well that I mentioned. Holding certain areas for a certain amount of time is also going to get you victory points. Rulebooks on the page, overviews on the page, a little bit of video from Board Game Co. and Company. And it comes even with a little bit of a deluxe edition if you're looking at that too. So a little bit more, including some spy cards, which are another special mechanic in this game, as well as an additional expansion that goes along with more mutations in the first place. So what's the price point? It's going to be $60, and if you include the parity pack as well, $45 if you just want the first edition of this. So if you really like Catan and you're looking for something with a slight step up, slight step adjacent as well, give this one a look-see. Now, Small City Deluxe Edition, don't let the name fool you, folks. It's anything but small in terms of both scope, rules, as well as price point. And this one, again, I was like, oh yeah, I can talk about this one. This one's in my depth. I'm like, oh yeah, this looks relatively straightforward. And then you get down here and it's like, heavy cardboard playthrough, right? Full teach. Whoops! Outside of my depth. So this is really like a big civ builder in terms of building your cities. And this is a game that's come to crowdfunding, I believe, twice previously with their other iterations and other content in the past. And now they're coming with 2 new separate expansions, spring and summer, but they're each going to cost you individually $44. Or if you want to get both of them together, it's going to be $84. They're adding new cities. They're adding a slight bit of new mechanic here as well, and some premium components as you go along the way, including these new concepts of leisure buildings, supplies of water, and specialized citizens, including police, teachers, workers, and traders. New terrain, new cities, and they run you through the exact components down there. I can't give you any more of a detailed component overview or mechanistic overview because this zone's a little bit too deep for me, but now 25 different expansions that you can modularly add together all at once, or a few pick and choose if you want. There you go, Small City Deluxe. Now we're going to talk about Card Bard, a musical card battler. It's actually surprisingly got $2,600 for a paucity of information that's on this page in the first place, which they kind of give you this overview of you're going to be playing innovative card battler with fantasy bards, fusing songs to build mechanics and taking up to, like, what does it say, 3 actions here per turn, but the ability to manipulate that. You can harmonize the cards together. You can get inspiration to do better performances as well as earn the fame. They talk to you about a promo pack that you're going to be getting here and the pledge levels, but that's it. They even have some quotes down here from Man vs. Meeple and Unfiltered Gamer, but no link to their content. I'm assuming there was content, but no link to it, no rulebook, no how it actually plays. So I'm really surprised that, you know, 50 people or so are backing this at this point. And I mean, it's got an early bird pledge here of, well, $18 and $20 and $60. So you really must have some people at these higher levels, because that's not a lot of people for more funding than I would believe at an $18 to $20 price point. So take that for what it is, I guess. Check it out if you're interested. But, you know, I'm surprised it's even got $2,600 given the lack of information and actually how you freaking play the game on the page. Now we're going to go over to GameFound here. We have Fighting Fantasy Adventures, the relaunch of these classic books turned into tabletop games. And this is from Martin Wallace. And this launched, I think, was it like even like last month over on crowdfunding on Kickstarter. And it did not do very well. And now for some reason, we're going over on GameFound, usually the opposite of what we've seen in the past. And it's already got $62,000, which is, frankly speaking, incredible. I'm kind of wondering what the difference is, but we've seen that. I've commented that multiple times a year about how sometimes these relaunches do a ton better and exceed expectations of even what the first one had. So this one appears to be quite similar. The gameplay that you're going to get along with this is not only solo, but also cooperative as you go along these dungeon-based stories in the first place. And if I remember, you're getting these events and you end up with these map cards where these enemies are, and you have to defeat the enemy and then just subsequently move to each room. And it's sort of a little bit of a press your luck as you go through these encounters. My concern was, though, after reading the rulebook last time, that because these decks are laid out in a certain order, in a certain way, when they're brought to you in the first place, the replayability of these individual adventures might not be as high, because yes, you can go in a different direction, but you're going to see stuff in a very similar order regardless, because of the nature of how they're built in the first place. They give you a little bit of the tactical nature in terms of how you're going to be attacking and defending, not only based on the enemies that you're presented with here, but then a column-based situation where you're going to be attacking and having to attack only the person in front of you, depending on how many there are in the first place. So, yeah, what's the price point for this now? VAT-friendly, $35. Is that it, really? $35? Okay, you can get some add-ons here, but that's a lot lower price for everything that I was thinking, all things considered, at $62,000 as well. And again, if you want more details here, they actually give you a nice summary down here. Play the dungeon card, read the encounter, tells you your objective. You're going through these rooms, picking and choosing which way you're going to go. Depending on what you run into, you're going to be playing these dungeon cards after you get to the encounters that you're going to run into. Playing as the heroes, fighting the monsters, lining them up appropriately, rolling dice though, and you're doing addition and subtraction based on what you roll compared to what they roll in terms of mitigation, as well with some of the abilities at your fingertips. And you have luck, allows you to re-roll, and you just go until you build the whole dungeon, complete the mission, or get knocked out. They give you a little bit more information specifically on the adventures here themselves, if you're not familiar with them in the first place, and then a little bit of what's actually going to be in the board, as well as some video if you really want to see what it actually flows like from a game standpoint. Now, if we go down here to the shipping, it's going to be what it's going to be, $5 to $15, relatively decent amount for a card game. So there you go. Check it out if you're interested. Again, exceeding expectations. I did not think this one was going to do nearly as well this time around, but they have exceeded, and awesome for them. Congrats. There you go. Now, next up, we have Eter. I'm probably mispronouncing that. I believe this is a Polish game, and this is actually a game that's already been made over on other crowdfunding over in Europe, and then now it's coming to mainly Kickstarter, and we're going to see what they can do here. It's not yet funded. We'll see if it gets funded, but basically what you've got going on here is a tic-tac-toe 3 in a row in a talk-style, mechanistic, card-driven approach. You have cards numbered 1 to 4, as well as a special card that can't be overlaid, just like your little crown or whatever the talk piece is that you can't, flip up or lay anything on. And then what you're gonna be doing is you're gonna be laying these cards down in a tic-tac-toe style 3 in a row, or if you get advanced mode, you can do 4 in a row, trying to be the top color to get that pattern matched horizontally, vertically, or diagonally. And so what you're gonna be doing is you're playing them down one by one until the win objective is completed, or the cards fill up all of the spots on the board in the first place. Now, the tricky part here is you can actually lay yours over someone else's if you play the higher number, and that's where the 1 to 4 system comes in handy. You also have the one that can't be overlaid, but you also, depending on how advanced you want to go, have an illusion card, which means you play it face down, and so the other person doesn't know, sort of like a Stratego-esque, and if they play one that's lower, well, then they lose out that card, but if they play one higher, then it takes that position in the first place. You also have explosions, which can take out cards, and then if you really want to go to an advanced mode down here with the other combat modes that they talk about, you can add asymmetric mage powers, depending on your personal style that you want to play with, that you get 1 per game, I think, because they call it plays in here, so I can't figure out if it's actually per round or if it's per game session that you play. But then the other element of things is actually elements, where there's, I believe, 3 different elements like fire, ice, and lightning that all have like anywhere between like 5 and 8, I think, or so different elements that you can mix and match, because you're basically playing 2 of them face up each hand or each turn. And then if you go and utilize them, then they can affect the board state in various manners. That's basically it in a nutshell. Mixed reviews over on Board Game Geek. Some people really like it as a tactical tic-tac-toe 3 in a row, or depending if you really want to get complex 4 in a row, 4x4 grid. Some people really like it, some people don't. And they talk about here the previous success already on over crowdfunding elsewhere. No stretch goals, wooden tokens, and the price point is what it is. I mean, it's $11 for an early bird. I mean, that's freaking cheap. And if you want to get the early bird here with a set, it's going to be what? $35? Okay. So that's it though. I mean, there's no other pledge levels. And so the artwork's kind of neat. It's just whether or not this abstract card-driven style of game is going to be for you. You can check it out. They got a print and play demo as well there, and they give you a little bit of setup. It's relatively straightforward. There's not a lot of mystery of what this game is. So it's just whether or not it's for you. And they run you through all the other modes, the rule books on this page, and a couple of videos as well if you're interested. So there you go. Last up, hamsters and deck building. I have no idea what's going on this page, but it's 300% funded right now. You're doing deck building with a hamster-esque Japanese theme, and that's all you need to know on the page. So, haha, thought I'd end on a high note. That's it. That's the roundup this week. As always, if you back anything, if you go over to those comment sections or you go to the forums or wherever you are, tell them Liege sent you. That's all I got. Patreon folks, they're getting a special look behind the scenes of upcoming reviews in case you missed any of the reviews from this past week. We did Hamlet, we did Adventure Realms, and we did stop buying a bunch of stuff for overpriced things and scalping promos at Gen Con. That was the week in Liege. So I've got 2 news videos that I'm going to smash into one because I didn't put one of them out soon enough, and it's going to have some relevant stuff from both and a whole lot of new stuff. And my wife bought me some calyxes without telling me, and I've got 2 new calyxes on that side behind the camera. Now I don't have nearly as many games on the floor. I can actually like walk. There's like a pathway on both sides of the table-ish. This is a small room, so there's not really a whole lot of pathway though in the first place. It's true. It's true. And there's still like probably like a 20 games sitting over here, right here. Various sizes between the bottom of the shelf and actually right next to me too. So yeah, that's all I got. Crowdfunding. 3 very intriguing games tomorrow. 3 very intriguing games. I'm very impressed by all 3 of them. And if you tune in, you'll find out what they are. No spoilers. That's all I got. So thanks for watching. Stay classy. Patreon me if you really want to know what's going on behind the scenes. That's all I got. Thanks for watching. Have a great freaking day.